in the heart of a bustling city, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and the streets buzzed with the energy of countless lives intersecting, there lived a man who was both a legend and a mystery. His name was Elias Thorne, a millionaire whose wealth was as vast as the ocean and whose past was as shrouded in secrecy as the depths of the sea. Elias was known for his philanthropic endeavors, his name often gracing the headlines for his generous donations to hospitals, schools, and shelters. Yet, despite his public persona, there was an air of enigma that surrounded him, a sense that there was more to the man than met the eye. Elias Thorne was not just a man of wealth. He was a man of contradictions. He lived in a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city, a place that seemed to exist in a world of its own. The mansion was a blend of modern architecture and old-world charm, with towering spires and intricate carvings that spoke of a bygone era. The grounds were vast, with manicured gardens, a labyrinth of hedges, and a serene lake that reflected the sky like a mirror. It was a place of beauty, but also of mystery, for few had ever been invited inside. The people of the city admired Elias for his kindness, but they also whispered about him in hushed tones. They spoke of his reclusive nature, of how he rarely attended the social events that were the lifeblood of the city's elite. They wondered about the source of his wealth, for while he was known to have made his fortune in technology, the details were vague, almost as if they had been deliberately obscured. And then there were the rumors, whispers of a dark past, of secrets that Elias Thorne carried with him, secrets that he would do anything to protect. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned to gold and the air carried the promise of change, a young journalist named Clara Bennett received an assignment that would change her life. Clara was a rising star at the city's most prestigious newspaper, known for her tenacity and her ability to uncover the truth. Her editor, a gruff man with a penchant for sensational stories, handed her a file with a single name on it, Elias Thorne. "Clara, I want you to dig into Thorne's past," her editor said, his eyes gleaming with the promise of a juicy story. "There's something about him that doesn't add up. Find out what it is." Clara accepted the assignment with a mix of excitement and trepidation. She had always been fascinated by Elias Thorne, intrigued by the contradictions that seemed to define him. She had written about his charitable work before, but this was different. This was an investigation, a chance to peel back the layers and uncover the truth. Her first step was to visit the places where Elias had made his mark. She started with the Thorne Foundation, a charitable organization that funded countless projects across the city. The foundation's offices were located in a sleek, modern building in the heart of the city, a stark contrast to the old-world charm of Elias's mansion. Clara was greeted by a friendly receptionist who directed her to the foundation's director, a woman named Margaret Hayes. Margaret was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-frills demeanor. She welcomed Clara into her office and listened as the journalist explained her purpose. "Elias Thorne is a private man," Margaret said, her tone cautious. "He prefers to let his work speak for itself. But I can tell you that his generosity has changed countless lives. He's not just a donor, he's a visionary. He sees potential where others see despair." Clara nodded, taking notes as Margaret spoke. She asked about the foundation's projects, about the people they had helped, and about Elias's involvement. Margaret was forthcoming, but Clara sensed that there was more to the story, something that Margaret was not saying. As she left the foundation's offices, Clara's mind was racing. She had learned a lot, but she still felt as though she was only scratching the surface. She needed to dig deeper, to find the threads that would lead her to the heart of the mystery. Her next stop was the city's archives, where she spent hours poring over old newspapers, public records, and anything else she could find that might shed light on Elias Thorne's past. She discovered that he had been born into a wealthy family, but that his parents had died when he was young, leaving him to be raised by a series of guardians. He had attended prestigious schools, but there were gaps in his education, periods of time when he seemed to disappear from the records altogether. Clara's investigation led her to a small, dusty bookstore tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The store was run by an elderly man named Mr. Whitaker, who had a reputation for knowing everything about everyone. When Clara mentioned Elias Thorne, Mr. Whitaker's eyes lit up with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Elias Thorne, you say?" Mr. Whitaker mused, stroking his chin. "Now, there's a name I haven't heard in a long time. He used to come in here back when he was just a young man. Always had his nose in a book, always asking questions. He was different even then. There was something about him, something otherworldly. Clara leaned forward, her interest piqued. Otherworldly? What do you mean? Mr. Whitaker hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. It's hard to explain. He had this air about him, like he was from another time, another place. He was always searching for something, always looking for answers. And then, one day, he just stopped coming. I heard he made his fortune, became a big shot. But I always wondered, what happened to that young man? What did he find? Clara left the bookstore with more questions than answers. Mr. Whitaker's words echoed in her mind, adding to the mystery that surrounded Elias Thorne. She felt as though she was on the brink of something, as if she was about to uncover a secret that had been hidden for years. As the sun set and the city lights began to twinkle like stars, Clara made her way to Elias Thorne's mansion. She had no appointment, no invitation, but she felt compelled to see the place for herself. The mansion loomed before her, its spires reaching towards the sky, its windows glowing with a soft, golden light. It was a place of beauty, but also of secrets. Clara approached the gates, her heart pounding in her chest. She pressed the intercom button and waited, her breath catching in her throat. After a moment, a voice crackled through the speaker, deep and resonant. "Who is it?" the voice asked. Clara swallowed hard. "My name is Clara Bennett. I'm a journalist. I was hoping to speak with Mr. Thorne." There was a long pause, and then the gates slowly began to open. Clara stepped inside, her senses on high alert. The grounds were even more breathtaking up close, the air filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of rustling leaves. She followed the path to the mansion's front door, where a butler awaited her. "Mr. Thorne will see you," the butler said, his tone formal but not unkind. "Please follow me." Clara's heart raced as she stepped inside the mansion. The interior was just as grand as the exterior, with high ceilings, ornate chandeliers, and walls lined with books and art. The butler led her to a study, where a fire crackled in the hearth and the scent of old books filled the air. And there, standing by the window, was Elias Thorne. He was taller than she had imagined, with broad shoulders and a commanding presence. His hair was dark, streaked with silver, and his eyes were a piercing blue, like the depths of the ocean. He turned to face her, and for a moment, Clara felt as though she was looking into the eyes of a man who had seen the world and all its secrets. "Miss Bennett," Elias said, his voice smooth and calm. "I've been expecting you." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "You have?" Elias smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that hinted at the mysteries within. "Of course. You've been asking questions, digging into my past. I knew it was only a matter of time before you came to me." Clara felt a surge of adrenaline. She had expected to be turned away, to be met with resistance. But Elias Thorne was different. He was inviting her in, offering her a glimpse into his world. "Why?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you letting me in?" Elias's smile deepened, and for a moment, Clara felt as though she was standing on the edge of a precipice, about to plunge into the unknown. "Because," Elias said, his eyes locking onto hers, "I have a story to tell, and I believe you're the one who can tell it." And with those words, Clara Bennett stepped into a world of mystery, intrigue, and secrets, a world where nothing was as it seemed, and where the line between good and evil was blurred. She had no idea what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same. Clara Bennett stood in the study of Elias Thorne's mansion, her heart pounding as the enigmatic millionaire's words hung in the air. Asterisk, "I have a story to tell, and I believe you're the one who can tell it." Asterisk, the weight of his statement pressed on her, and she felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She had spent weeks chasing shadows, piecing together fragments of his life, and now, here he was, inviting her into his world. Elias gestured toward a pair of armchairs by the fireplace. "Please sit," he said, his tone calm but commanding. Clara obeyed, her reporter's instincts kicking in as she pulled out her notebook and pen. Elias remained standing for a moment, his gaze fixed on the flames dancing in the hearth. Then he turned to her, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. "You've been asking questions about me," he began, his voice low and measured. "About my past, my wealth, my motivations. Most people are content with the image I present to the world, the philanthropist, the recluse. But you want to know more. Why is that? Clara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I think there's more to you than what people see. Your generosity is undeniable, but there's something else, something hidden. I want to understand who you really are. Elias smiled faintly, a hint of approval in his expression. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, Miss Bennet. It can lead you to places you never expected, reveal truths you might not be ready to face. Are you sure you're prepared for what you might find? Clara nodded, her determination unwavering. I am. Elias studied her for a moment, as if weighing her resolve. Then he turned and walked to a bookshelf on the far wall. He ran his fingers along the spines of the books, stopping at a seemingly ordinary volume. With a gentle tug, the book slid forward, and Clara heard a soft click. The bookshelf swung open, revealing a hidden doorway. Follow me, Elias said, stepping into the darkness beyond. Clara's heart raced as she rose from her chair and followed him. The hidden passage was dimly lit, the air cool and slightly damp. The walls were lined with ancient stone, and the floor was paved with smooth, worn tiles. As they descended a spiral staircase, Clara couldn't help but feel as though she was stepping into another world. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a vast underground chamber. Clara gasped as she took in the sight before her. The room was a library, but unlike any she had ever seen. The shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with books of every size and color. Some were bound in leather, others in cloth, and a few looked as though they were made of materials she couldn't even identify. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink, and the soft glow of lanterns cast flickering shadows on the walls. This is my private collection, Elias said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Books that have been lost to time, secrets that have been forgotten. This is where I come to find answers, to learn the truths that the world has buried. Clara stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the spine of an ancient tome. What kind of secrets? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias walked to a nearby table and picked up a small, intricately carved box. He opened it to reveal a delicate silver key. Some secrets are too dangerous to be spoken aloud, he said, handing her the key. But if you're truly determined to uncover the truth, this will guide you. Clara took the key, her fingers trembling slightly. What does it open? Elias's expression grew serious. A door. One that leads to a place where the past and present collide, where the line between reality and myth blurs. But be warned, Miss Bennet. Once you step through that door, there's no turning back. Clara's mind raced with questions, but before she could ask any of them, Elias turned and began to walk away. Wait, she called after him. Where does this door lead? What am I supposed to find? Elias paused and looked back at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. You'll find the answers you're looking for, but you'll also find questions you never thought to ask. The key will guide you, but the journey is yours to take. With that, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Clara alone in the hidden library. She looked down at the key in her hand, its surface cool and smooth. She felt a surge of determination, mingled with a flicker of fear. Whatever lay ahead, she knew she couldn't turn back now. Clara spent the next hour exploring the library, marveling at the sheer volume of knowledge contained within its walls. She found books on alchemy, ancient civilizations, and forgotten languages. Some of the texts were so old that they crumbled at her touch, while others seemed to hum with a strange, almost magical energy. As she wandered deeper into the library, she noticed a peculiar pattern on the floor, a series of symbols etched into the stone tiles. They seemed to form a path, leading her toward a distant corner of the room. Clara followed the symbols, her curiosity growing with each step. At the end of the path, she found a door. It was unlike any door she had ever seen, made of dark, polished wood and adorned with intricate carvings. The carvings depicted scenes from myths and legends, dragons, knights, and strange, otherworldly creatures. In the center of the door was a keyhole, its shape matching the key Elias had given her. Clara's heart pounded as she inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click, and the door swung open to reveal a narrow, dimly lit corridor. The air was thick with the scent of earth and something else, something she couldn't quite place. She stepped inside, the key still clutched in her hand. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, its walls lined with more carvings and symbols. Clara felt as though she was walking through a dream, the boundaries of reality shifting with each step. Finally, she reached the end of the corridor and found herself in a small, circular chamber. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, and on the pedestal rested a single object, a mirror. But this was no ordinary mirror. Its frame was made of twisted silver, shaped like vines and leaves, and its surface shimmered with an otherworldly light. Clara approached the mirror, her reflection wavering as though it were underwater. As she stared into the mirror, the surface began to ripple, and images started to form. She saw a young Elias Thorne standing in a forest, his face filled with wonder and fear. She saw a woman with long, flowing hair, her eyes filled with sorrow. And then she saw something else, a shadowy figure, its form shifting and changing, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Clara stumbled back, her breath coming in short gasps. The images in the mirror faded, leaving only her reflection staring back at her. But something was different. Her reflection smiled, a smile that was not her own. Before she could react, the chamber began to shake, the walls closing in around her. Clara turned and ran back down the corridor, the key still clutched in her hand. She burst through the door and into the library, the door slamming shut behind her. She leaned against the bookshelf, her heart racing, her mind filled with questions. What had she just seen? What did it mean? And most importantly, what had she gotten herself into? As she caught her breath, Clara realized that the key in her hand was no longer just a key. It was a symbol of the journey she had embarked on. A journey that would take her deeper into the mysteries of Elias Thorne's past, and into a world where the lines between reality and myth were blurred. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that this was only the beginning. Clara Bennett stood in the hidden library, her heart still racing from the encounter with the mysterious mirror. The key Elias Thorne had given her felt heavy in her hand, as if it carried the weight of the secrets she was beginning to uncover. She knew she couldn't stop now, not when she was so close to understanding the enigma that was Elias Thorne. As she caught her breath, Clara noticed something she hadn't seen before. The carvings on the walls of the library seemed to shift and change, forming new patterns and symbols. One particular carving caught her eye, a depiction of a forest with trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky. At the center of the forest was a clearing, and in the clearing stood a figure that resembled Elias, his hand outstretched as if reaching for something. Clara traced the carving with her fingers, feeling a strange warmth emanating from the stone. As she did, the key in her hand began to glow faintly, its light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She realized that the key was more than just a tool. It was a guide, leading her to the next step in her journey. Determined to follow the path laid out before her, Clara left the library and made her way back to the mansion's main floor. She found Elias waiting for her in the study, his expression unreadable. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Clara hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "I found the mirror," she said finally, "and I saw things, images of you, of a woman, and something else, something dark." Elias's eyes darkened at her words, and for a moment, Clara thought she saw a flicker of fear in his gaze. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by his usual calm demeanor. "The mirror shows fragments of the past," he said, his voice low. "But it also shows possibilities, paths that could have been taken. What you saw is just the beginning, Miss Bennett. The journey ahead will take you to places you never imagined." Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm ready. Tell me what I need to do." Elias walked to a nearby desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a small, leather-bound journal. He handed it to Clara, his expression serious. "This journal belonged to someone very important to me. It contains clues that will guide you to the next step in your journey. But be warned, the path is dangerous, and not everything is as it seems." Clara took the journal, her fingers brushing against the worn leather. She opened it to the first page and saw a map drawn in intricate detail. The map depicted a forest, with a path leading to a clearing. At the edge of the clearing was a symbol that matched the one on the key. "The Forest of Whispers," Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's a place where the veil between worlds is thin, where the past and present collide. The answers you seek lie within, but so do dangers you cannot yet comprehend. Clara looked up at Elias, her determination unwavering. I'll find the answers, no matter what it takes. Elias nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. Then go, Miss Bennett. But remember, trust your instincts, and beware the whispers. With that, Clara left the mansion, the journal and key clutched tightly in her hands. She made her way to the edge of the city, where the urban landscape gave way to dense, ancient forests. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels. As she entered the forest, Clara felt a strange sensation, as if the very air around her was alive. The trees seemed to whisper, their leaves rustling with secrets long forgotten. She followed the path laid out in the journal, her steps guided by the key's faint glow. The deeper she ventured into the forest, the more the atmosphere changed. The light grew dimmer, the shadows longer. The whispers grew louder, forming words that she couldn't quite understand. She felt as though she was being watched, though she saw no one. After what felt like hours, Clara reached the clearing depicted in the journal. It was a serene, almost magical place, with a pool of crystal-clear water at its center. The trees surrounding the clearing were taller than any she had ever seen, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that filtered the sunlight into a soft, golden glow. But as Clara stepped into the clearing, she felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and she realized that they were coming from the pool. She approached the water cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. As she looked into the pool, the surface began to ripple, and images started to form. She saw Elias again, but this time he was older, his face lined with sorrow. He stood at the edge of the pool, his hand outstretched as if reaching for something or someone. And then she saw the woman from the mirror, her eyes filled with tears as she reached out to him. But before Clara could make sense of what she was seeing, the water began to churn, and a figure emerged from the depths. It was the shadowy figure from the mirror, its form shifting and changing, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Clara stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. The figure stepped out of the pool, its presence filling the clearing with an oppressive darkness. The whispers grew louder, forming words that sent a chill down her spine. "You should not have come here," the figure said, its voice a blend of many, each one filled with malice. "This is a place of secrets, and secrets have a price." Clara's mind raced as she tried to think of a way to escape. But before she could move, the figure lunged at her, its form shifting into a swirling mass of shadows. She raised the key, its light flaring brightly, and the figure recoiled, hissing in pain. The journal fell from Clara's hands, landing open on the ground. As the pages fluttered in the wind, she saw a symbol that matched the one on the key. Without thinking, she pressed the key against the symbol, and a blinding light filled the clearing. When the light faded, the shadowy figure was gone, and the whispers had fallen silent. Clara stood alone in the clearing, her heart still racing. She looked down at the journal and saw that the pages had changed, revealing new clues and a new path to follow. As she left the clearing, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she had only scratched the surface of the mystery surrounding Elias Thorne. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. The answers she sought were within reach, and she was determined to find them, no matter the cost. Clara Bennett emerged from the forest of whispers, her mind still reeling from the encounter with the shadowy figure. The journal in her hands felt heavier now, as if it carried not just the weight of its pages, but the burden of the secrets she was uncovering. The key, still glowing faintly, seemed to pulse with a quiet urgency, urging her forward. The journal's new pages revealed a map leading to a small, forgotten village nestled deep in the valley. The village was marked with a symbol of a clock, its hands frozen at midnight. Beneath the map, a single line of text was scrawled in elegant, faded ink. "Find the clockmaker. He holds the key to the past." Clara's journey to the village was long and arduous. The path was overgrown, as if nature itself had tried to erase it from existence. The air grew colder as she descended into the valley, and the sky above was a patchwork of gray clouds. When she finally arrived, the village was eerily quiet, its cobblestone streets empty and its windows dark. The only sound was the distant ticking of a clock, echoing through the stillness. The village was a relic of another time, its buildings leaning precariously as if they were too tired to stand upright. At the center of the village stood a clock tower, its face cracked and its hands unmoving. Clara approached the tower, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The door to the tower was slightly ajar, and a faint light flickered from within. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was cluttered with gears, springs, and countless clocks of all shapes and sizes. Some were ornate, with intricate carvings and delicate hands, while others were simple and utilitarian. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, and the ticking of the clocks created a symphony of sound that filled the space. At the center of the room, hunched over a workbench, was an old man. His hair was silver, his hands gnarled with age, but his eyes were sharp and focused as he tinkered with a tiny gear. He didn't look up as Clara entered, but his voice broke the silence. "I've been expecting you," he said, his voice raspy but warm. "You're the one Elias sent, aren't you?" Clara nodded, though the man still hadn't looked at her. "Yes, my name is Clara Bennett. I'm trying to understand Elias Thorne's past. The journal led me here." The old man finally turned to face her, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. "Elias Thorne," he murmured, as if the name carried a weight of its own. "I haven't heard that name in a long time. Sit down, Miss Bennett. I have a story to tell." Clara took a seat on a rickety stool, her heart pounding with anticipation. The old man wiped his hands on a cloth and leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "My name is Samuel," he began. "I was once the clockmaker of this village, a title passed down through generations. But I was more than that. I was a keeper of time, a guardian of secrets. And Elias Thorne, he was one of those secrets." Samuel reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, ornate clock. Its face was made of glass, and beneath it, tiny figures moved in a delicate dance. He placed it on the table between them and wound it with a key. The figures began to move, their motions fluid and mesmerizing. "Elias came to me many years ago," Samuel continued. "He was just a boy then, but even then, there was something different about him. He carried a burden, a darkness that he couldn't escape. He told me he had seen things that no one should ever see. He spoke of a shadow, a force that had taken everything from him." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "The shadowy figure I saw in the forest. Was that what he meant?" Samuel nodded. "Yes. That shadow has haunted Elias for as long as I've known him. It's a manifestation of the darkness that exists in all of us. But in Elias, it took on a life of its own. He came to me seeking a way to control it, to lock it away. And I gave him a clock." Samuel gestured to the ornate clock on the table. "This is no ordinary clock. It's a prison, a device designed to contain the darkness within him. But it came at a cost. To use it, Elias had to sacrifice a part of himself, his memories, his past. He became the man you know today, a man of wealth and generosity, but also a man haunted by the fragments of what he lost." Clara's mind raced as she tried to process Samuel's words. "So the shadow, it's still a part of him?" Samuel's expression grew somber. "Yes, the clock can only contain it for so long. Eventually, the darkness will break free, and when it does, it will consume him and anyone else who stands in its way." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "Is there a way to stop it?" Samuel hesitated, his gaze shifting to the clock on the table. "There is one way. The clock must be destroyed, but doing so will release the darkness entirely. The only way to defeat it is to confront it, to face the shadows within ourselves. But it's a dangerous path, Miss Bennett, one that few have survived." Clara's determination hardened. "I have to try. Elias has done so much good. He doesn't deserve to be consumed by this darkness." Samuel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But know this. The clock is tied to Elias's life force. Destroying it will not only release the darkness, but also put Elias's life at risk. You must be prepared for the consequences." Clara took a deep breath, her resolve unwavering. "I understand. What do I need to do?" Samuel reached into the drawer again and pulled out a small, silver key. It was identical to the one Clara already carried. This key will unlock the clock's final mechanism. But once you turn it, there's no going back. The darkness will be unleashed, and you will have to face it. Clara took the key, her fingers trembling slightly. Where do I find the clock? Samuel's expression grew grave. It's in the heart of the forest, in a place where time stands still. But be warned, the forest will test you. It will show you your deepest fears, your darkest regrets. Only by confronting them can you hope to succeed. Clara rose from her seat, the keys and journal clutched tightly in her hands. Thank you, Samuel, for everything. The old man nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. Good luck, Miss Bennet. May time be on your side. As Clara left the clock tower and made her way back to the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a storm. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. The fate of Elias Thorne, and perhaps the world itself, depended on her. The forest loomed before her, its trees whispering secrets she couldn't yet understand. Clara took a deep breath and stepped inside, the keys and journal guiding her forward. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she was ready to face it, no matter the cost. Clara Bennet stood at the edge of the Forest of Whispers, the twin keys in her hands and the journal tucked securely under her arm. The forest seemed darker now, the trees leaning closer together as if to block her path. The air was thick with tension, and the whispers that had once been faint were now a cacophony of voices, each one vying for her attention. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The clockmaker's words echoed in her mind. The forest will test you. It will show you your deepest fears, your darkest regrets. Clara knew she couldn't afford to falter. Elias Thorne's life, and perhaps her own, depended on her ability to confront the shadows within herself. As she stepped into the forest, the world around her seemed to shift. The trees twisted and contorted, their branches forming shapes that resembled faces, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. The ground beneath her feet felt unstable, as if it might give way at any moment. The whispers grew louder, forming words that cut through her like knives. You're not strong enough, one voice hissed. You'll fail, just like you always do. He's already lost, another voice sneered. Why bother trying to save him? Clara clenched her fists, forcing herself to keep moving. She focused on the keys in her hands, their faint glow a reminder of her purpose. She thought of Elias, the man who had given so much to the world, the man who had trusted her with his darkest secret. She couldn't let him down. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, but Clara pressed forward, her determination unwavering. Finally, she reached the heart of the forest, a clearing bathed in an unnatural light. At the center of the clearing stood a pedestal, and on it rested the ornate clock Samuel had shown her. Its glass face shimmered, the tiny figures inside moving in a slow, deliberate dance. But the clock was not alone. Standing beside, it was the shadowy figure Clara had encountered before. Its form shifted and writhed, its glowing eyes fixed on her. The whispers grew deafening, the voices blending into a single, menacing tone. You're too late, the figure said, its voice a blend of Elias's and something far darker. The darkness has already won. Clara's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain calm. No, she said, her voice steady. It's not too late. I'm here to stop you. The figure laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. You? A mere mortal? You think you can defeat me? I don't have to defeat you, Clara replied, her eyes narrowing. I just have to face you. She stepped forward, the keys in her hands glowing brighter with each step. The shadowy figure recoiled, its form flickering as if unsure of itself. Clara reached the pedestal and placed the keys into the clock's mechanism. The figures inside the clock stopped moving, and the forest fell silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud click, the clock's face shattered, and a wave of darkness erupted from within. The shadowy figure grew larger, its form solidifying into a monstrous shape. Its eyes burned with hatred, and its voice boomed like thunder. You've doomed us all, it roared, lunging at Clara. But Clara stood her ground, her heart racing, but her resolve unshaken. She closed her eyes and focused on the light within herself, the light of hope, of courage, of love. She thought of Elias, of the kindness he had shown the world, of the sacrifices he had made. She thought of her own journey, of the fears she had faced, and the strength she had found. When she opened her eyes, the darkness was upon her. But instead of fear, she felt a strange sense of calm. She reached out, her hand glowing with a soft, golden light, and touched the shadowy figure. The figure screamed, its form dissolving into smoke. The darkness swirled around Clara, but it couldn't touch her. The light within her grew brighter, pushing back the shadows until they were nothing more than a memory. The forest fell silent once more, the whispers fading into the wind. The clock on the pedestal crumbled into dust, and the clearing was bathed in a warm, golden light. Clara sank to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. As the light faded, she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Elias Thorne standing before her, his face pale, but his eyes filled with gratitude. He knelt beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You did it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You faced the darkness, and you won." Clara smiled weakly, her strength fading. "I couldn't let it take you. Not after everything you've done." Elias helped her to her feet, his grip firm but gentle. "You've given me a second chance, Clara. A chance to live without the shadow hanging over me. I can never repay you for that." Clara shook her head. "You don't have to. Just promise me one thing." "Anything," Elias said, his eyes earnest. "Promise me you'll keep doing good," Clara said. "The world needs people like you." Elias smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I promise." As they left the forest together, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but it had been worth it. She had faced her fears, confronted the darkness, and emerged stronger for it. And as the sun rose over the horizon, casting its golden light over the world, Clara knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same courage and determination that had brought her this far. The story of Elias Thorne and Clara Bennett was far from over. But for now, they had found a moment of peace, a moment to rest, to heal, and to prepare for whatever the future might hold. The end.